After nearly a year of everyone being trapped inside, it's safe to say most people are pretty done with the whole COVID thing. With an official vaccine being released, most people feel it's only a matter of time before we move past this virus and all the devastation it brought. So, when I saw that Comedy Central announced a new South Park special, I was excited for a few reasons. To me, South Park has always felt like a grounding mechanism in a sense. I always thought that as long as South Park is on the air, there's still some normalcy in this world. As long as they have topics to make fun of, I still have some hope for society. So when South Park had not announced any news about the new season in 2020, it made me lose some hope. I felt as though the world had finally surpassed South Park in its absurdity, leaving the show with nothing to make fun of. After all, how can a show based on satire survive when the world itself is already so absurd? I then experienced some temporary relief when the pandemic special was released. It felt like the show was fighting back against 2020, declaring that they weren't going to let 2020 stop them from making us laugh. But after the special was released, the sense of hope began to fade. As the weeks continued on, it felt like the show would never return, and once again, there was no order in the world. Then, the vaccination special was announced, and once again, I got that feeling that everything would be okay. Soon enough, everything would be back to normal. That was, of course, until I watched the episode and, well, the prospect of things going back to normal feels further away than ever. Now with the intro out of the way, let's get into it. South Park's vaccination special, Return to Normalcy, is futile. Now, it's clear from the beginning that the intention in this episode was to highlight the eagerness everyone shares at the prospect of a return to normal life. This is first seen in how the town responds to vaccinations. Everyone in the town wants the vaccine, not only for their own safety, but also because everybody is anxious to return to their lives. People are willing to wait for hours in line for even the smallest possibility that they'll be able to receive the vaccine. The vaccine, however, is almost exclusively reserved for elderly people and immune deficient people, meaning that their desperation for a vaccine is almost futile. The exclusivity of the vaccine is parodied by giving the local Walgreens all the tropes of an exclusive nightclub, including a long line, leather rope, and merciless bouncer checking a list. It's a pretty clever way to highlight the demand people have for anything that could help bring them back to a normal life. The same can be said about the boys, as this episode documents their relationship problems that were brought on from the pandemic. Cartman is concerned by the tension they've all been experiencing in their broship recently, and him and Kenny decide it's time to do something to try and reignite the flame that had been extinguished. They decide the best way to do this is to prank their teacher. The prank doesn't go very well and ends up making their teacher quit on the spot due to the stresses of not being able to receive a vaccine and having to put up with all this. While Cartman and Kenny find it funny, Stan and particularly Kyle don't find it funny, and instead of bringing them together, it only pushes them further apart. Once they learn that their new teacher will be Mr. Garrison, they focus on finding a way to get their old teacher back as soon as possible. The only way she's willing to return is if they can get her a vaccine, and they know that this means they have to work together to get them. As the episode progresses, the desperation to mend their relationship progresses as well, and they discuss other possibilities. They discuss how they're only trying to work it out for Kenny's sake, and decide the best solution is to cycle who gets to hang out with Kenny. This whole subplot is meant to mirror the experiences of many families through this pandemic, with Stan, Kyle, and Cartman taking the place of a married couple, and Kenny taking the place of their child. It's meant to demonstrate the strain that the pandemic has placed upon families across the globe, causing otherwise successful relationships to fall to the hardships that have come with all of this. It also shows the same hope that everyone shares that maybe once everything gets back to normal, everything will be worked out. The boys do everything they can to hold their broship together, with the hope that maybe their issues will go away when everything is normal again. It's a pretty sad reflection on the events taking place with thousands of families around the world.
I've been trying as hard as I can to hold things together, but I have to admit, I'm just going through the motions.
On a brighter note, however, this episode brings with it the return of Mr. Garrison. The now ex-president makes his return to the town of South Park, and out of everyone, his desperation for a return to normalcy is greatest. Upon his return, he discovers that he can't simply return to the town and act like nothing has changed, as much as he wants to, because the town has certainly not forgot his controversial past. As much as he tries to return to his normal life by reapplying to be a teacher and even having a new sidekick, Mr. Service, the fact that the whole town despises him makes it very difficult. After almost all of his students are pulled out of his class due to their parents' hatred of him, he decides to get to the bottom of it. What he discovers is that his students are now being taught by supporters of what I'll call Anon, because YouTube has some censorship issues anyways, a conspiracy theory that details how the Hollywood elites control every aspect of our lives, while also being pedophiles that feast on children to give them their life force. He also learns that those same Hollywood elites want everyone to hate him so that they can put one of their own into office and have even more power. Worst of all, he discovers the vaccines contain microchips that will be used to control anyone injected with them. Knowing that the boys are heading to school to give vaccines to all the teachers, he realizes he has to stop them. This is when the show goes super meta, as Mr. White, the person who told Mr. Garrison about the conspiracy, reveals that two of the Hollywood elites are trying to stop them from foiling their plans. This is, of course, referencing Matt Stone and Trey Parker, who, by definition, would be considered Hollywood elites. Mr. White is proven right when a cursor appears and begins changing him, as if he were in an animation software, into different things to try to discredit him. When Mr. Garrison sees this, he begins talking directly to the creators of the show. He reveals that he doesn't care what they do. He doesn't care that they are pedophiles and murderers. All he cares about is getting his normal life back. He then suggests making a deal with them, and it cuts to Mr. Garrison being the hero of the town by providing the entire town with vaccines. It's implied that he received these vaccines in exchange for not confirming the truth behind the Anon conspiracy. The entire plot following Mr. Garrison is really the best example of the point being made. The desperation Mr. Garrison has to return to his normal life is so great, he's willing to withhold the information that every aspect of their entire lives are controlled by Hollywood superstars that are also pedophiles and cannibals, solely because it means that he can return to his normal life. While it's clearly a hyperbole of the average person, it's meant to demonstrate the lengths people are willing to go to feel normal, and I think it does a great job at that.
Nice doing business with you, you little child-murdering pedophiles.
Now that I've made it abundantly clear that each plotline in this episode shared the main idea of a hope for normalcy, you may be thinking, is that it? Is that all the creators have to say? To answer your question, no. The deeper message comes in the ending to all the plotlines. The message is almost a rebuttal to the hopes of everyone around the world, a nihilistic yet sadly accurate outlook on the chance of returning to normal life. It's impossible. There will never truly be a return to normal life for anyone that lived through this. This is first seen when the boys are finally able to deliver their vaccines to the teachers. Upon their arrival, they notice that their teacher has come down with a cough. It proceeds to abruptly cut to her funeral, where it's announced that she's died of COVID. For someone like her and her family, life will never be the same, as she misses out on any life experiences that were to follow, and her family now has the grief that comes with losing a family member. This is also seen in the broship between the boys. Throughout the episode, we're expecting this to all get worked out in the end, and of course the boys aren't going to stop being friends. However, even though the entire town is vaccinated and life should be back to normal, the problems in their friendship remain. The episode ends with them greeting each other for what should be the last time they hang out together, as Kenny is handed off to Cartman for the weekend. This just further elaborates on the idea that the quote-unquote normal life will never be returned to. Though this pandemic is what initially caused many of the problems people are experiencing, those problems aren't just going to vanish along with the pandemic. Even if everyone in the world gets vaccinated, the effects of this pandemic will be felt forever. We won't ever be able to return to the lives we had before the pandemic, because those lives were before the pandemic. We'll never return to normal simply because there is no normal to return to.
Everything's gonna be okay, Kenny. I'll see you on Monday.
And I'll come pick you up on Thursday, Kenny. Huh?
Hey, I wish you guys all the best, huh?
Wow, that got pretty dark. So, to end it on a lighter note, allow me to look back on the final scene with the boys. Even though they recognize that life will be different, they accept that that doesn't necessarily mean it's for the worse. No one is particularly sad about the change, it's more of an acceptance of the change. And I think that's how everyone should view this. As we move into the future, you shouldn't try to hope that life will be just like it was before because it won't be. Instead, you should look forward to all the good things that could come from the effects of these times. Like, you could look forward to, like, public events like concerts and parties, those will be fun. Well, I guess we still don't really know how long it'll be before that, but you could look forward to not having to wear masks all the time. That'll be good. I mean, granted, there are some new strains that show possible resistance to the vaccine, and I guess you probably would still wear a mask. Yeah, this is gonna be tough.